The Six Ring Canes Show. I am Jazz Santana. I am joined live here by Danny Gillette and Paul Astria of Five Reasons Sports Network, and got a lot of things to cover today, right? I mean, some kind of breaking news going on today. Busy day today in college football, altogether with a few big time conferences announcing that they're going to go ahead and follow suit and opt out of playing in the fall. I know Pac-12 mentioned that they do want to play in the spring, possibly, but I think it's important to kind of cover this because I think where does that leave the ACC, the SEC, the Big 12 teams that really do want to play? I know that they're kind of holding the line per se, making sure that everybody is safe. And according to the ACC officials and all that, they seem to be pretty confident with the fact that they are going to be safe to play this season. Again, joined by Danny Gillette and Paul Asher. Danny, we'll start with you on, what's going on with the Power Five conferences with a couple conferences going ahead and opting out. What does this do for college football this season? Can you see the SEC and the ACC kind of following suit eventually and giving in to what the other Power Five conferences are doing?
Well, I think when you take a look at the ACC and the SEC, the SEC loves football. They are the king of college football. So I think it would take a lot for them to cancel their season. It's interesting that the ACC and the SEC, like you mentioned, Jazz, basically put out a statement a couple of minutes apart that basically said we're moving forward. So I think what we're seeing is two conferences that at least want to wait until the last second before they make the call to not have a season or not. It's really interesting that these two in particular are fighting to have a season. I mean, I think, you're looking, this could be dependent on, whether cases are rising in certain states and things like that, but the fact that they both want to move forward either tells me that those two conferences are going to play or they're holding out just to not rush and make a decision.
Paul, what do you think about this? What's going on?
It's insane. I mean, it's just kind of like at first it kind of seemed like, okay, every conference wanted to get together and kind of come to a consensus, but there's just a bunch of rumors flying around like the Big Ten was planning to cancel the season regardless and just try to convince every other conference to follow suit, just so Big Ten teams wouldn't lose their players to the teams that will play this season. So it's honestly like it's hard to keep up with everything. From what I've heard, ACC's at a point where like they're kind of moving away from canceling the season even more so than before. I think it's kind of like unless something really happens in the middle of their plan to continue, then they'll kind of throw an audible in there and make a decision. But as of right now, it looks like probably the ACC is probably the most certain to play this season. The SEC, like Danny mentioned, they're the money makers. That's so much revenue involved with the SEC in terms of TV money. That kind of stuff. So it's kind of interesting to see how everything will play out. With transfers. Will guys that can't play the season, like teams in the Big Ten or in the Pac-12, will they consider transferring to conferences that will play the season? It's just it's a lot. It's kind of it's fluid. I know I say the word fluid a lot, but it's just a lot of craziness right now.
I mean, fluid, I think, is a good word, man. I mean, fluid is good for everything that's going on in life right now, right? It's constantly changing. And by the way, we are gifted the presence of Jakari Givens now joining us on the Six Ring show. What's up? All right, how you doing, Jack? We're actually diving in. And by the way, thank you to Manny Chang for producing the show. Although he's a Gator fan, whatever, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt today. And thank him for producing so he won't screw it up. So we'll definitely give him his props. But, Jock, we're talking about Pac-12 opting out to play in the fall, Big Ten opting out to play in the fall. And I was talking to these guys about, who, if anybody else, is going to follow suit. But now, bringing up something that Paul said, and maybe you can kind of elaborate on this. the transfer portal, right? A lot of these teams, a lot of these conferences are going to have top players that aren't going to be able to play now in the fall. Do they want to wait till the spring, number one? And number two, will you see a lot of their guys, even some of the guys that maybe would have to redshirt this year, and also the top guys now enter the transfer portal and maybe go to the SEC and the ACC?
I feel like this. So I think they're kind of overreacting with the whole situation. I think they should have waited to make a decision, number one. Because now I know the coronavirus is a health risk, but right now when you asking players to play 2 seasons within a 6 to 7, 8 month span, you're putting their life at danger. Football is already a high collision sport. So imagine trying to fit 30 games within 8 months, because you're going to play the season, the championship game, then the conference championship, and then the college football players, which is the additional 2 games. So I just think they kind of overreacted with that situation. But the top guys that are going to declare for the draft. So those guys, we're not worried about it. But the transfer portal, I think if you are a fringe starter or a starter, then maybe. But you cannot transfer to, say, Oklahoma or Alabama and expect to get on the field right away, because you're already behind. Those guys are already been in camp. Unless you're just one of the top guys. Like, for instance, if Parsons from Penn State was to enter the transfer portal, of course he's going to have a plethora of options. But at the same time, like, that guy right there will be an instant starter. One player I am interested to see what he's going to do is Justin Fields, because, will he transfer? Because he's a fringe draft pick. A lot of people got him first round. I think this season was going to be big for him as far as his draft status. So I want to see if he were to enter the transfer portal, what would be like some of his options. Because I feel like the Big 12 is going to play football. So I think what you may see is the teams that want to play, you may see them leave their conferences and just go ahead and join another Power 5. Or you can just see the Power 5 conferences breaking away from the NCAA in total. I think we're at a groundbreaking point. I think college football will never be the same after this, because I think the players are going to have so much power to do what they want to do now, because they're going to have a board and after this whole situation. So I think the real reason why they cancel, let's be honest, is the money. They don't want to generate the money themselves to help these kids play football. With no fans in the stands, they're not going to make money. So this was a whole money issue. The kids are safer on campus than they would be going back home. You talk about one, environment. 2, are they going to be social distances and following those guidelines? But my biggest thing is the environment that they're going to be in once they go back home, because some of those guys do not have the privilege of going home to great environments.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. I think, that number one, I think, is the most important thing, Jock. Talking about family environments, talking about going back home. And it's funny because I'm watching that show, The Last Chance U, and a lot of that has to do with that, right? You see a lot of guys that are traveling a couple hours just to go play football. And what's going to happen to the kids that don't have that steady household where they can go and get support from their family? It's going to be tough for them, right? Another point that you brought up is some of the big name guys like Justin Fields and some of the other big name guys in the Big Ten and in the Pac-12. Penei Sewell. I know Penei Sewell is probably not going to play. He's probably just going to opt out completely. He's going to be a first-round pick. But maybe some of the fringe guys like you're talking about may not go to some of the bigger schools, like you said, in Alabama or Florida or some of these big schools, Clemson, because they may not get on the field right away. But I can see them going to some of the lower tier ACC and SEC schools like your Vanderbilts and Arkansas and Wake Forest and Duke, and going in and playing right away. That's going to make those conferences that much more competitive, but it's also going to make it exciting. I honestly think that this is going to be a really exciting college football season, because you're going to have so much talent condensed if it all goes, as planned, where people kids start transferring, and of course they're going to get approved right away to play, immediately eligible to play. I mean, I just don't see how they can't be. I think it's going to be exciting, but at the same time, Jock, you bring up a great point, man. These kids can't play 2 seasons in a span of 8 months. Number one, they won't do it. And number two, that's dangerous. You're talking about the coronavirus, and it is. Coronavirus is very dangerous. Obviously, we have to take care of it. That to me, that it's not going to happen. So, and then you've got the draft right after, so you've got kids.
So that's another
right?
rule. That's another rule which you'll have to put in effect, because in the NFL bargaining agreement, they can't have the draft past June 2nd. So the NFLPA will have to make an agreement, say we're going to move the draft back. But that also will hurt teams in scouting, because it's going to be all off film. It won't be no combine, no none of that, because you're going to be going straight from the field to playing. But I also want to bring up this point. I'm not a doctor. I've been dealing with the coronavirus just like we have. But if you're telling me it's okay for those kids to play that many games in that many months, then it should be okay for those guys to go back to school. Student athletes only can go back to the school, be the only kids on campus, and they can play football.
Good point. So many things are going to change from now till even 30 days from now when the season is supposed to open up, man. It's so many things are going to change. I want to kind of keep on with this subject because I think it's important, because it's popular, it's hot. Danny, can you see all the conferences just kind of getting together, playing each other, coming up with a playoff system between, let's say, the Big 12, the SEC, and the ACC, and then just coming up with some sort of playoff system now? Jock mentions getting away from the NCAA altogether, that format of the four teams college playoff, maybe do like an 8-team college playoff. And can you see them just kind of going head-to-head and going at it and picking a national champion from there?
I could, because you take a look at what's happened on social media the past couple of days. The hashtag We Want to Play was all over Twitter. I believe it was yesterday. And I also covered Nebraska football, and their head coach, Scott Frost, he was really passionate about wanting to play football this season and the fact that his kids were ready to play. And, even when you take a look at what Trevor Lawrence said, he said, we want to play football, and he was using that hashtag as well. And that to me meant a lot, because he has nothing to really gain from this season necessarily. He's going to be a high draft pick. He's going to be one of the top draft picks next year. So
he's gonna be the number 1 pick.
Yeah. He will.
Oh yeah.
He will. But I do see these players or teams kind of forming their own schedule, because there's a lot of players that do want to play, and there's obviously a lot of fans that want to see them play, and like you guys kind of mentioned, I think this is sort of a step towards going away from the NCAA and doing things on their own accord, which in my opinion isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Especially when the money that's involved, right?
Yeah, it's kind of the perfect storm right now for those guys, because next year we'll be falling into the players where they can get played for their likeness. So it's kind of the perfect storm that's going into the season right now.
Well, I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about this in the coming weeks, in the coming days, in the coming hours. Who knows? God knows.
Yeah.
Again, that word fluid, Paul, man, that word fluid, that's exactly what it is.
I got to find a different word. I'll find one soon, I promise.
Let's pivot over a little bit to what we were going to originally start off with this, right? But, with all this breaking news going on with the conferences, I want to pivot over to some recruiting news again, right? We got a little bit of a shocker early on in the week. And then the second one, not so much, right? With Jason Marshall actually picking the Florida Gators. From what I understood, it was down to Alabama, Miami, right? A little bit more than the Florida Gators. And all of a sudden he decides to go ahead and commit to the Florida Gators. And then, of course, right after his mate there, Corey Collier, decides to commit there as well. That does open up a couple things, right? Maybe some other opportunities for other guys to come in. Paul, talk to me a little bit about what you can see. What's next for the Canes in recruiting now with these two, kind of going off? Do we still have a shot with them, or are we looking elsewhere? And what else do we got going on?
Honestly, I don't think they would pursue them further, only because I feel like specifically Collier and Marshall, because they both play defensive back, and I kind of have a feeling that they picked Florida just because of their success in the league with cornerback with safeties. Longevity is a whole different thing. I'm not going to talk about that, but they've had multiple high draft picks. They just had Chris Henderson this past draft, do the first round pick. You're talking about what, Vernon Hargreaves, Jalen Tabor. There's a lot of guys that come to mind. I think Miami kind of came prepared for this. I mean, in reality, it was even making Marshall's top two would have been was thought of as a long shot. But they've been recruiting a couple other guys. Marquis Brown is another guy, a 4-star corner out of IMG Academy. I think he made Miami's top 5. I'd imagine they push him harder. At safety, honestly, if Collier did pick Miami, it would have been a surplus just because they already had probably 2 top safeties from South Florida already committed in Cameron Kinchins and 5-star James Williams. So I don't think they'll really push for another safety. I think they'll kind of go for a bunch of other guys that they kind of just weren't on the fence about if they had a spot in this class. Like you talk about, they're still recruiting Tyreek Sapp, who is a defensive end out of St. Thomas Aquinas. He's committed to Florida right now, but he also says his recruitment's also open. I never get those kind of things. I never understand what those guys mean by that because it doesn't make sense. And then you have Amari Daniels, 4-star running back out of Miami Central. Miami doesn't necessarily need another running back because they just took 2 in this past cycle, but definitely a great playmaker along with wide receiver Keith Brown, I believe out of Gulliver last time I checked. He's a guy that could probably fit in as well. But yeah, in a way, it kind of gives Miami a clearer picture on who they recruit going forward, because I know they prioritize Marshall and Collier as well, but they have 3 spots left, so it's kind of and they also, I think they're recruiting Chase Smith very hard, the linebacker / athlete out of Palm Bay. He probably have a spot if he chooses to commit as well. So I think they're fine for now. They're not. I would say it's a huge loss to not get Marshall just because he would have played right away, in my opinion, next season. At the same time, they did come prepared, and I think cornerbacks coach Mike Rumpf, as well as safeties coach Ephraim Banda, they've done a terrific job, and I think they'll find a way to figure things out.
Why do you feel like Marshall would have played right away?
I think he just has all the intangibles. I mean, he's 6'2", long wingspan, 5-star kid. I just feel like, I don't know. I know Christian Williams, I mean, I haven't seen how Isaiah Dunson's done so far in camp. I just do think that.
Well.
Oh, it's a quick catch as well. I think maybe not start right away, but at least definitely be in the mix for the playing time. I would say. I feel like there's not as much of a learning curve with Marshall. I think the kid's way too talented to not see the field his first year.
I know you want to say something, Jock. Go ahead.
The only rebuttal I have to that is the kids who play in Dade County don't get necessarily the best coaching. If you notice, most of those guys that play like positions on defense, specifically corner, or don't go to college and start right away, just depending on what school they go to. I know you had DeAndre Breaker, who went to Georgia, and he played right away, but look what school he went to, because I don't think they get the best coaching. I'm not familiar with Palmetto's. I'm familiar with the kids because I am from that area, but I'm not familiar with their coaching style. So that's why I kind of question that. But I mean, it is college, so these kids have a chance. But I don't think Miami. It's too much talent in South Florida for Miami to really get down when they lose out on recruits from here.
But you do see that. You do see that a lot, right, Jock? A lot of 5-star kids that come out of here, regardless of position, are just gifted athletes, right? They go around. They're very good, and they don't need a lot of coaching because they just fly all over the field and they make plays. Considering not every high school in Dade County is good, right? You've got a lot of not so good high school teams out here as well. So a lot of these kids, they may go to an SEC and they may go to a Big 10 or a Big 12 school and show out and be a first-round pick later on. But a lot of them flame out as well because Now they need to get coaching. Now they do get coaching. Now they have to fit a specific system as opposed to be able to just roam around, a safety roam around and come up at the line and do different things and get away with it. Right now it's a little bit different. Maybe a kid like a perfect example is a kid like maybe Devad Wilson, who went up to Georgia, highly touted kid out of Miami, went up to Georgia, and now he's back in the state because for one reason or another he decided to transfer back. There's a lot of cases like that, right? That's just one that came to my head right away. Jaylen Francois, those kids leave and then they're just like, whoa, what am I doing here? This is a different animal. I mean, I'm not used to Jaylen Francois was a stud over at South Dade. Gets to Nebraska. Maybe he didn't like the culture. Maybe he didn't like the people he was around. He wasn't around, his teammates and the players that he's used to playing with. And they come back and then they flame out like that too because they get lost in the shuffle. Happens a lot to a lot of athletes down here. And I think that's why it's important for Miami because at this point it looks like they're starting to figure out a way. Well, they're getting the right coaching staff, but they're starting to figure out a way to develop some of these guys, especially – and I got to admit, especially on the defensive side, right, where they've been able to do a little bit of a better job than on the offensive side. I think now that'll change a little bit with Rhett Lashley here and Garen Justice and Rob Likens, who's been able to develop a lot of wide receivers going to the league, right? I think that's going to change a little bit on the offensive side, but I think it's important that, listen, you can't get everybody, right? So the guys that you get, develop them. And I think now they're doing a lot better job. That's why I wasn't so concerned about at first it was a shock when Rousseau decided to opt out, but at the same time, you understand the reason for what he did and how he did it. And now you've got all these guys like Harvey and the Williams kids and what's the other kid that I'm missing? Jaylen Phillips. You got these guys that I think we're going to be okay there, right? Same thing applies for the safety position. We're pretty loaded at safety right now. Kids that don't get mentioned like Keyshawn Washington, who's another kid that I think could possibly get some playing time. It's important to understand that these kids need to be developed. And we talk about them how, that they're first round kids right now because they're 5 stars. But 18 years old, man, a lot can happen between 18 and 19 and 20 years old. Your body develops different. God knows what happens. So I'm happy for who we got. 3 out of the 5, not so bad, right? Davion Collins decided to show up his commitment a little bit. And then you've got Leonard Taylor and Brashard Smith. So I think we're good there. I think the next guy, for me, the next guy that I think is going to commit, I'm going to go out on a limb. Not really. I think it sounds kind of obvious. Is Amari Daniels. I think he's the next guy that's going to commit. I know we don't need a running back, but he's
those guys
a lot out there on social media.
Those guys can move. Those guys can move positions as well. So you can recruit them as a running back. You can be recruiting him as a running back, and then he turns out to be one of your better defensive players or something.
Oh, yeah. Like or he can move to the slot. I mean, that happens a lot too, right? He can move to the slot because he's a kid that can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's fast. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that they can do, especially with this offense now with Rhett Lashley. He's going to do – I think Rob Likens was talking about being able to put out 5 to 6 receivers on the field at one point. That's going to be pretty explosive. It's going to be dangerous, and I'm excited for it. Danny, with recruiting the way it's going, what do you see in the future for Canes football when it comes to the 2021 class and even into 2022?
I see a lot more Florida-based players because I think we just talked about it. We landed, three out of the 5 Palmetto kids? I think by landing those 3 kids, you talk about developing players. It's also important to develop pipelines with those schools and with those coaches. I mean, I definitely see a lot of kids staying home in Florida, and I certainly see a lot more recruiting battles with Florida as well because you can bet that the Gators are going to certainly be doing their homework. It'll be interesting to see, this recruiting period was kind of weird because there wasn't campus visits. A lot of stuff had to be done via Zoom. And so if in 2021 we can get back to a sense of normalcy in terms of recruiting and campus visits, that may sway one recruit's decision to come to Miami or to not come to Miami. It's been a really interesting dynamic in that respect this year.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think that saying that brings up the point that Jakari made earlier about so many things changing in the NCAA and college football, high school football, is the way people are going to be recruiting. This is going to just I can't imagine the things that coaches and players are going to come up with now to get recruited and to commit and to be able to go on virtual visits. I think I think the whole entire landscape of college football is going to change. And I think it's going to change for the better. I think there was a lot of things that were broken, the whole system per se, and they're moving in the right direction. It's a shame that something like this pandemic had to occur for it to happen maybe a little bit quicker. But I think a lot of things are going to change. I think we're gonna finish up with one more topic. I think that's important. We haven't really talked about it, right? Is the guys are practicing, fellas, right? Practice is going on. We're on our fifth practice now. They've been in shells a little bit. There's some talking going on with De'Aaron King praising a couple guys. I think he's talking about Jalen Knighton a little bit, saying he's praising his play on the field. There's Jaylen Phillips now wearing 15 again, and he looks good out there. Talk to Paul. I know that we spoke about this a little bit, and talk to me about what's going on with fall camp. How are the guys looking? What have you heard from both sides of the football?
To start off, I think a lot of the guys there are just kind of very thankful that they can even be on the field with their brothers, their friends, and just kind of I don't know. It's the closest thing to normalcy that they can kind of feel right now. It's kind of just getting the rhythm of, okay, it's August, time to get ready for the season, and they're just very, very thankful for that. The one thing that I'm watching the most, and I think is easily the biggest question mark I have for this team, is the offensive line. Now, offensive line coach Garen Justice is in his first year at the position, and this is the time where they kind of do the kind of card shuffling of who fits where, who's better here, who's better there. I think the first day he had John Campbell left tackle, Ousmane Traore. I'm not sure. I never know how to say his name right.
Ousmane Traore.
Traore, okay. He's at left guard, Corey Gaynor center, and then both DJ Scaife at right guard, and then Jared Williams on the right tackle. But then he switched it up the second day, and then he had Campbell, Zion Nelson at left guard, Gaynor center, Scaife at right guard, and Williams. So they're trying a lot of things. They're even trying to see if Ja'Kai Clark would be better at left guard. I think he did that on Sunday. And from what I think Justice did speak highly of freshman left tackle Jalen Rivers, who they said could probably, he came in at 6'7", 330, and he has the size to play pretty much any position on the line. He didn't want to kind of rush him into it, so he's having him start at left guard right now with the hopes of him kind of going to left tackle somewhere down the line. But it's no secret that one of the biggest cons or shortcomings last year was the offensive line and how abysmal they were. It was one of the things where, like, random note, but out of the 7 losses they had last year, 5 of them were by a touchdown or less. And you can imagine, what if there was one play where they gave up one less sack? What would have led to? Would have led to a big play, so on and so forth. I mean, special teams also plays a part in that, but it's just kind of see if they can find that stability, that lineup that works for them, in that hopefully this offense succeeds and is kind of lives up to the hype that we mentioned when they brought in Brett Lashley. So but for the most part, it's still kind of seeing where things are. And like you mentioned, Jalen Knighton's been killing it. I do think that he'll find a way to not only play the season but probably be Cam Harris's backup, just because I feel like his skill set kind of fits well within Brett Lashley's offense. Just give him the ball in space. I mean, they call him Rooster for a reason. That kid is fast. So it'll just be interesting to see. And I think today's the last day for the meantime until the ACC makes a final decision on whether there will be a season. So once again, a lot of fluidity with that.
Yeah. Jock, I'm glad that he brought up the offensive line because, it seems like we're always kind of singing that tune, right? It's the offensive line always. What's the offensive line going to do? But I think this year, we brought this up in the last show. There's going to be a lot of deficiencies that are going to be able to be hidden by Derek King coming in and playing quarterback. I think he's going to be able to hide a lot of the shortcomings that maybe the offensive line may have. at the beginning of the season because he's very mobile, obviously, right? So he's the epitome of a dual threat quarterback. He's definitely the kid that can get out of the pocket, make a lot of things happen with his legs, but he can also throw the rock, right? So for me, it's not so much the offensive line. What I want to see is the position players, the skill players. Who's going to step up at wide receiver? I know KJ Osborne did a great job last year, kind of stepping up and being that guy. Who's the guy that's going to do it this year? We saw a glimpse of it with D. Wiggins last year on a couple of really big plays. We saw Mike Harley do a little bit as well. Mark Pope, to me, is the guy that I keep going back to, and I'm like, this kid's talent, he needs to put it all together, and he needs to show up on the field. I know there's some other kids coming in that are playing really well. Apparently, a lot of the freshmen that came in, the Daslin Worsham, Xavier Restrepo, and the kid Keyshawn Smith, also out of California. I know a lot of these kids are coming in and playing really well. Another one, Peyton, is another one that's supposedly playing really well. Who's the guy, Jock, that needs to step up as a skill player, whether it's receiver, tight end, running back? Who's the guy that needs to step up this year to kind of give Derek King that go-to guy?
To make a point about the O-line, I don't think the O-line will be that big of a deal this year just because of Lashley's offense. It's a quick-hitting offense. They get the ball out very fast, so it's a very, they don't dink and dunk, but it's up-tempo, so the ball has to come out to get rhythm plays. For me, it is Pope, but I also am interested to see who's going to be the other cornerback. So, it's so many guys.
Who is it that you're not convinced with? Then is it Ivy or is it Blades? Is it which is the guy that you're not?
Blades is the best corner to me.
Okay.
Ivy has a look. To me, he had I'm not the biggest fan of him. I don't. I feel like if they got the freshman, I think they'll come in and play right away, depending on how the competition goes. But that's me. But for me, it's the same person as you, as Mark Pope. I got to see Pope put it together because this is his time. Miami doesn't really have no other receivers besides him. Not like other established receivers. Like, this is his time to finally step up and be the guy. I mean, obviously the offense is going to go through Brevin Jordan and Derek King. They're going to get a lot of reps. And I'm surprised Jordan hasn't opted out. Like, I haven't heard much about what he may do.
I think he's still got something to prove, man. I think he's still got something to prove. I really do.
Because him and Mallory, they make a good 1-2 combination. So for me, it's just the receiver position. Mark Pope for me, because I really want to see the kid put it together. I watched him play a few times in high school. So I really want to see him, just as a fan, like him growing up in our neighborhood and stuff. I really want to see the kid just do what he can do because he can fly. He's good. You saying that night, I really want to see what Chaney does. I wonder if that's a guy that may move positions as well, depending on how it works out. Because if Rooster becomes the guy after Harris, I mean, you got him for 3 years. You know what I mean?
So, yeah.
We got to see how that works out as well.
Well, and Chaney's coming off a shoulder injury as well, so I think it's going to take some time for him to I know he's ready to go, but I think it's going to take some time for him to see the field. I think
he's an explosive player too, though.
He is. He's very explosive. So I think that's why you got to make sure that shoulder is good to go because, a kid like Knighton's ready to go now. Again, Mark Pope to me is the most talented receiver we have, and he just has to put it together and play and show it on the field, right? I like D. Wiggins. I think D. Wiggins is going to be a great down the field threat. But Mark Pope is the guy that can make a play all around the field. Mike Harley, I love. God bless his soul, but I just don't think he's our number one wide receiver, right?
He's good though.
He's good. He's actually a very good quarterback. Listen to me, a very good wide receiver. But I think guys like Mark Pope, D. Wiggins, those guys got to step up. And for me, it's Pope all the way, man. I think he's got to put it together. Danny,
I think
go ahead.
Pope was, super highly rated coming out of high school, And for what I've heard, the guy wasn't even running organized routes. Like he was just going
No,
out there running it. Quarterback was chucking it, and he
correct.
just come down
And
with it. So just
that
imagine if he actually gets the little things down, learns his
that
routes, learns the playbook.
And I think
Watch out.
that's what he needs, right? Is put it
that
all
goes
together. That's exactly what he needs.
That's what
Yeah.
goes back to the point where I was making. The kids down in Dade County, besides a few schools, Columbus and a few other schools, get the coaching. Those guys down there are not getting the coaching that they need.
Yeah.
So that's why
Yeah.
when they go to college, they struggle.
Yep, I agree. Danny, any last words on that, on practice and some players you want to see?
I want to see Mark Pope like the rest of you guys. I mean, he has tremendous athleticism and speed. He had 3 catches for 92 yards against Bethune-Cookman, and I know some people will say, oh, well, it's Bethune-Cookman, but that right there showed his speed, and then I believe he had 2 catches for 45 yards against FIU. So there's no doubt that he has a talent. He just needs to be able to step up and put it together this year, and he's in a unique situation with Derek King now. I mean, King is a very talented quarterback, and lots of receivers would love to have King throw the ball to them, especially on the run or making adjustments or have the ability to make adjustments. So I think Pope is definitely a guy to watch out for, and I think him and King could be special for sure.
Absolutely. Hey guys, I think we're gonna end it here. I think that was exciting. I think we got so many more things coming up soon with the conferences, and of course, hopefully, there is an ACC season, so we can get together and keep talking about this stuff, because I think it's going to be exciting if there is football. I think it's going to
Cross
be
our fingers.
Yeah, cross our fingers, definitely. Jock, Danny, Paul, I want to thank you guys for coming on. Let them know where they can find you on social media. I know we have the little marquee coming up out there where they can see your ads, but go ahead and give a shout out. Jock, go ahead.
Well, you can find me on Twitter at KingJock24. I'm on that most of the time, or you can catch me on 5 Reasons Sports and 6 Ring Kings. Hopefully, we do get a final chance. Well, we're supposed to have 6, but we ain't gonna talk about
Right,
that.
Right. There's an asterisk on that one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right,
Paul.
you guys can find me at Paul Austria _. I'm pretty much checking Twitter all the time. I'm trying to keep up with you guys and see, what are the rumors, what's going on. So keep it tuned to my account, as well as our 5 Reason Canes account, for your latest news and whether there'll be college football this season.
You can find me on Twitter at DGillette95, JAILLET 95, and I'll be covering as much Hurricanes news as I can, as well as a bunch of other things for 5 Reason Sports. I'm like the utility man of 5 Reason Sports. I try to do it all. Whatever Ethan asks me to, I try to do it. So if you could give me a follow, that would be great. I love working with all these guys. So
awesome, man. Awesome. Thank you. You can reach me at Jazz Santana. But again, like Paul said, most importantly, follow us at 5 Reasons Canes. Check that out for all the latest news. We'll try to post there as much as possible. Try to keep you guys up to date, all the Canes fans. 5 Reasons Canes is the Twitter handle. Check us out there. I want to thank again Danny, Jakari Givens, Paul Astria, and of course, my man behind the scenes, Manny Chang. Thank you, my brother. Till next time, go Canes. You're watching the 6th ring. It's all about the U, baby.
All about the U. Go Canes.